Chris Crosby, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast.
Hey, it's Tom Matthews from Return of the Living Dead and Friday the 13th, Part 6, to name a few, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast. Enjoy.
Hey guys, Tyler Main here, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast.
Hi, I'm John Russo, screenwriter of Night of the Living Dead. Welcome to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast. Enjoy.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.
What up, Mean Militia? I'm Mean Joe Grizzly, and when I'm not painlessly sitting through a soulless remake, gazing at a great deconstruction of the slasher genre, or witnessing an epic origin story of a post-apocalyptic heroine, I'm at the Grizzly Cave, watching movies, reading comics, listening to metal, and of course, crushing beers. And yes, I am finally back from my hiatus with a trio of reviews ranging from a lazy remake of a modern cult classic in The Strangers Chapter 1, to the brutal and experimental in a violent nature, and the awesome origin of Furiosa from the Mad Max universe. But before we get started, please make sure to follow me on all social media pages, subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel by clicking the links in the description below. By doing that, you'll help me continue to talk about all forms of badassery. So let's kick things off with The Strangers Chapter 1. This is Grizzly Grade Reviews. On the way across country to celebrate their 5th anniversary, couple Maya and Ryan stop in a small town in Oregon to grab lunch, but they become stranded when their car breaks down and are forced to stay the night in a secluded Airbnb. There, a simple knock at the door sets in motion a terrifying fight for survival as they are descended upon by a trio of murderous, masked individuals. I was pretty excited when this was announced a couple of years ago, and I felt that The Strangers had a decent shot at benefiting from an origin story and a soft reboot. And then I got a little more intrigued when I heard it was getting a release in May, and then the next one will be released later this year, and then the final installment in the beginning of 2025. Then I got even more hopeful when they announced that Rennie Harlan was directing, since he had previously directed a few films that I really enjoyed, like Nightmare on Elm Street 4: The Dream Master, Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, The Long Kiss Goodnight, and Deep Blue Sea. And then while I was on my hiatus, I started seeing a lot of mixed reviews and a whole lot of negative reviews and reactions from people that I respect in the horror and movie critic community. And I thought, maybe they're just being a little too harsh. Maybe it's just like a lot of times where I'll be able to see it for what it is and enjoy it. Well, I was wrong. Woo, man, was this disappointing. Chapter 1 unfortunately commits every single violation in the what not to do when you remake a movie book, including the ultimate sin, making almost a shot-for-shot remake. Well, maybe not a shot-for-shot remake, but it definitely takes every single cue and beat as the original. Couple goes to a remote house out in the middle of nowhere, gets a knock at the door, girl shrouded in darkness asks if Tamara is there. She leaves, 3 masked individuals show up and begin terrorizing the couple, etc. The only change is the means by which the couple makes it to the remote location. Some of these same exact atmospheric scenes are used as well, like the man in a mask peering from behind the door, or in the background of the shot, Dollface snooping around while the victims hide, or the pinup girl's face coming into focus out of the darkness. But not in a different or unique way. Just the same gags over and over again, but with less creativity and effectiveness. It even has the same shotgun scene as the first film, but it strangely feels familiar yet poorly done at the same time. Madeline Pesh as Maya and Froy Guntres as Ryan are absolutely comical in their performances, and I don't know if it's because they aren't good actors or if it's the atrocious dialogue, but either way, they are horrible. They're so bad. Scenes that start building this great tension are ultimately derailed because of ridiculous overacting by Pesh that is flat out cartoonish. Like, just imagine a toddler throwing a temper tantrum and crying like in the table scene in Step Brothers, where Dale and Brennan are told by Doback that he and their mother are getting a divorce. It's just like that. That's how horrible, like, her moments where she's crying because of pain or that she's, quote, scared or whatever. It is ridiculous. Froy Guntres, on the other hand, can't show not even 1 ounce of human emotion. Like, he's a fucking robot in this movie. And they gave him asthma, and it was this real poor choice because he can't even hyperventilate right. It's really, really bad. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm not an actor. I didn't go to school for it. But I've seen enough movies to know who is good, who is bad because they are phoning in their role because they just want a paycheck, and who is great. These two are not good at all, even for cheesy slasher standards. And as I said earlier, having horrendous dialogue doesn't help. This is like the 5th damn movie I have seen this year that is 100% written by AI. I know that the screenplay and the script have 2 individuals credited, but I refuse to believe that a human being wrote not only the dialogue, but also this absolutely boneheaded events and decisions made by these characters in this damn movie. It's so damn lazy. Every single trope ever was included in this. The killers, also different. They just aren't menacing as they were in the original, and they surely ain't as menacing as they were in The Stranger's Prey at Night. Partially because they don't fucking do anything. They are like scare actors in a haunted house, like non-threatening throughout most of the movie. There's this one scene in the movie that is present in the trailer where one of the female killers acts crazy and screams at gunpoint. It was hilariously cringy. Like, seriously, the audience in my theater was either laughing or sighing at the stupidity. I also feel like they changed something up with one of the female's characters' mask. Like, it's really hard to tell Dollface and Pinup Girl apart now. At least that's how it looked to me when I was seeing the movie, because in the older ones, one had dark hair and one had long blonde hair, so you could tell them apart even if their masks looked similar, even though they really don't look similar. I know that's petty, but it was something that really stuck out to me. But honestly, it's a shame because I don't think it's a poorly made film. I mean, it looks great. The lighting, the atmosphere, the cinematography, they're all good. And Rennie Harlan doesn't necessarily do a bad job at directing. He was just working with bad actors and an even worse script. It's just unfortunate, guys. Also, we were told we were going to get this definitive origin for the Strangers. Well, that didn't happen in this movie. And who knows, maybe it will in the next one. My theater was pretty full, so I'm thinking the second film will get a theatrical release, but after the way it's being received, I don't see it. And it very well could be that when the trilogy's done, the overall product will be good. But that's not likely since all 3 films are already been finished. So there's no way to improve on the mistakes of this one. So more than likely, it will be just as bad as this one, if not worse. But we can only hope, right? It's just a soulless remake with bad writing, comical performances, and cringeworthy dialogue that honestly brought a lot of disappointment for fans looking for a fresh take on these characters in this franchise. So with all that being said, The Strangers Chapter 1 gets a 2 out of 5 and is not Grizzly grade guaranteed. If you don't believe me, see it in a theater near you for yourself, if you dare. So let's move on to In a Violent Nature. Deep in the Canadian wilderness, a group of campers unknowingly disturbs the unmarked grave of an undead slasher named Johnny, after one of them takes the only thing keeping him at rest, his mother's locket. Johnny rises from the grave and begins his brutal and bloody pursuit of those who disturbed his rest, while we, the audience, are there every step of the way. I first heard about this movie earlier this year when it was making its rounds through the festival circuit, and then I seen the trailer before the movie Stop Motion earlier this year, and I have been patiently waiting to see this, hoping that my local theater will be showing it. And luckily they did. So I attended an early screening that my theater was offering and seen it a few days early, and I can say that I was not disappointed. I loved it. And I didn't really know what I was going to see when I entered the theater that night. I had heard it was best described as a ambient slasher, or Friday the 13th as a nature documentary. And there's a lot of truth to that. But I've seen it a couple of different ways and perspectives. The first thing I noticed almost right away was, whether the director wanted to admit it or not, a major influence for at least the camera angles and the point of view and the overall cinematography was definitely influenced by third person over the shoulder perspectives in video games, such as the latest Resident Evil games, Gears of War, and most of all the Friday the 13th game. The director Chris Nash 100% took inspiration from that, in my opinion. There is too many similarities and cues from those games for it not to have been an influence. And to my knowledge, Nash hasn't been asked this in an interview or addressed it in a Q&A or anything. It just seems so obvious to me, but I could be dead wrong. The second thing I noticed was something that I also noticed in the trailers and something I've theorized after seeing them. This movie was going to take the bare bones premise of Friday the 13th, part 2 in particular, and offer a killer point of view of the behind the scenes leading up to the events in the film. And I know that sounds very obvious, and honestly it's like a no shit dude kind of statement, but let me elaborate on what I mean. The Friday the 13th franchise is the franchise that in a lot of ways perpetuates all the tropes of slasher films, with each entry sometimes to ridiculous levels. And even though we are horror fans and we love these films, we can openly admit that those tropes become tiresome and even annoying at some point. In a Violent Nature takes these tropes and puts them in the background instead of at the forefront, but not to put them out of sight, but to ultimately put them in the view of Johnny. By doing this, you deconstruct the slasher genre because you actually get to see how ridiculous these tropes are through Johnny's eyes. How the killer magically appears on the trail that the camper's at. How he seems to teleport across the room when in all reality the camper just wasn't paying attention and he made his way over there pretty slowly. All that stuff gets deconstructive because we're seeing it through Johnny's point of view. And we followed Johnny through about 85% of this movie, whether it be him slowly walking through the woods, standing in the shadows while stalking his victims, or watching him discover his tools of murder. And it's oddly therapeutic. I know that sounds so freaking weird, but it is. The scenery in this movie is amazing, and I mean amazing. The cinematography is absolutely incredible. It's on par with some of the best nature documentaries. The sound design is also incredible. You can literally hear almost everything, from the rustling of the leaves and the brush to these far-off conversations between the victims. Both of these factors combined is what gives the audience this ambient atmosphere, and it definitely is a big appeal of the film, even if it can be to its own detriment at times. Yeah, sometimes these long shots of Johnny walking through the woods can be a little daunting to sit through. I don't want to use the word boring, but for some people it's going to be very fucking boring to them. But to me, I was so intrigued that it didn't really affect me that way. And yeah, I know a lot of people, in fact, the majority of people will absolutely hate this aspect of the film. And unfortunately, it is the main talking point of the film, how we just watch this guy walk forever. But I really appreciate the choice to do something unique and different, even if it's this divisive. I see that, I see this in a different way to view the film. Now, what is probably the next most talked about aspect of this film is the absolutely brutal kills. Johnny does not fuck around. There's some new takes on old classics, but there is one in particular that is 100% a all-timer. I have seen a lot of horror films in theaters over the years, and what is now being called the yoga kill is definitely one of the greatest audience reactions I have ever seen. Everyone was cheering and clapping. It was a practical effects masterpiece. I've never seen that kind of reaction from a kill. Even in Terrifier 2, when I went and seen it last year, or the year before last, it wasn't as crazy as a reaction as I seen with that yoga kill. And Johnny's very creative. It's very easy to think that he's just another Jason or Michael Myers, but he's far from that. Now, he definitely takes characteristics of Jason, but he's got a few things that are different. His weapons of choice are pretty cool, and they're pretty different from Jason's. Johnny's weapons are tied to like old school firefighter equipment. So he has this device that's like two massive hooks that are connected by a real thick logging chain that he uses, and he also has this large, broad, short axe with like a short handle, and he is a fucking surgeon with them. There's like scenes where he's throwing it like, this guy's, Johnny don't fuck around. He also dons this like hood / respirator that is apparently also tied to early firefighter equipment. I've never really seen those uniforms before, but it looks very menacing and very creepy. And when Johnny goes in for these kills, the camera angle will change, and we get to see Johnny as he's moving in for the kill from either like the actual victim's point of view overhead, or facing the victim while Johnny comes up behind him. All that was pretty cool how they did that with the camera work. Just goes along with how great the cinematography for this movie was. As far as the victims go, they're nothing to write home about. In fact, they're intentionally annoying and poorly acted. At least in my opinion, I think they do, because it kind of goes along with the handling of the tropes, because that's ultimately the purpose of this film, to deconstruct the slasher genre. And I've seen a lot of people online that are like really pissed off about how bad the victims are, and that they don't believe that it was intentional, like they were just that bad. I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe it was all intentional. Everything that's done in this movie, trope-wise, I believe was done intentionally. It's kind of the point of the movie, and I'm kind of disappointed in a lot of people, especially a couple of people that I follow, that this kind of went over their head. And maybe not. Maybe I'm not as smart as I think I am, but that's how I seen it, because that's what this movie is ultimately doing. So it just kind of seemed pretty obvious to me. And I'll admit that when we actually got more time with the victims, I feel like it could have been done differently and with a little more creativity. And what seems to be the most divisive point of the movie for fans who actually enjoyed it is the ending. I personally would have done something a little different, but there are some people who like the way it ended. I was not one of those people. But ultimately, In a Violent Nature is a film that is either hit or miss. I haven't seen any people really that are in between on this movie, but for me, it is a hit. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and in fact, it is currently in my top 5 horror films of 2024. I think it's a very interesting approach to deconstructing this genre, and I'm actually surprised it's never been done before. Now, it isn't without its flaws, particularly the ending for me, and this won't have a lot of rewatch value for many people, but I really liked and appreciated what Nash was trying to do here. Maybe if there's a sequel, he can perfect the flaws it has, but if not, it's fine for it to be a solo film too, because after all, not everything needs to be a damn franchise. So with all that being said, In a Violent Nature gets a 4.25 out of 5 and is definitely Grizzly grade guaranteed. Check out In a Violent Nature in theaters today, or watch it when it comes on Shudder in a few weeks. But now let's move on to the post-apocalyptic epic Furiosa. After being kidnapped by an army of wasteland raiders and witnessing the torture and murder of her mother at the hands of their leader Dementus, Furiosa spends the rest of her life surviving, learning, and preparing to enact her revenge against Dementus by any means necessary. For me, the Mad Max franchise is consistently good with each installment, with Beyond Thunderdome being the weakest in the franchise, and Fury Road and the Road Warrior constantly fighting for like the top spot for me. And with the success of Fury Road and the popularity of the character Furiosa, 9 years later we would get a prequel and a side story that centered around Furiosa and her origins. And I wasn't really super excited about it when it was first announced. I liked the character, but I would have rather just seen Max back in another original story. And I was even less excited when Charlize Theron wasn't returning. Then, when the production started and the casting was announced that Chris Hemsworth was playing the villain and Anya Taylor-Joy was playing a younger Furiosa, I finally got excited. And after seeing it, I can say that those were phenomenal choices for those roles. Chris Hemsworth was absolutely great as Dementus. It's just so interesting to see him play this larger-than-life villain. In the harsh world of the Wasteland, we have seen a lot of different villains, but we've never seen a villain like Dementus. The villain he's more of a threat because of him being a cult of personality that leads with the influence of hype and pageantry. It is so damn interesting. And I'm not saying that he isn't a physical threat, but he truly holds power with his influence due to his personality and his ability to bluff better than anyone, and to also be incredibly brazen. He can get so many people to join his cause. He's almost like a cult leader. And Chris Hemsworth's makeup makes him look almost unrecognizable. It's very, very well done. And his performance was incredible. He done such a good job of being such a scumbag opportunist that it is actually a coward deep down inside. Now, I knew that Anya Taylor-Joy would absolutely crush it as Furiosa, and for the most part she does, but I was a little disappointed that they didn't give her a lot of dialogue. And I know that in the Mad Max films, the main protagonist, Max, really doesn't say much, but in Fury Road, Furiosa had the most personality of all the characters in that movie, so I expected her to grow into that character more as far as the personality goes. And it just didn't deliver that to the level I expected, especially since they casted a superstar like Anya Taylor-Joy. But they do show how she is super capable, as well as how she becomes even more capable throughout her journey to revenge. She is a badass. She is flat out fearless. And that is what makes her character so damn cool. Even when they took her personality down a notch, she still has so much personality without even saying a word. The journey of revenge is a story that is old as time as itself, but it's a little bit different when it's told in the world of Mad Max. It like places this real harsh and dark lens over it as we're viewing the wasteland when we're thrown into it while we're watching these movies. But the last film, as far as like the look and the environment of the wasteland, is so colorful and quite honestly beautiful. The movie's cinematography is immaculate, just like Fury Road. There's so many badass shots and scenes in this movie. One in particular is in the trailer. The scene is when Dementus is hanging from the platform that is falling, and this waterfall of bullet casings just rains over him as he's holding on for dear life. That shot was so damn cool. It was so incredible. And there's, of course, like a multitude of action scenes, but I will say that even though they have all these great scenes and they have all these cool action stunts going on, I was a little disappointed because I've seen a lot of CGI. And Mad Max is a franchise that prides itself on having these incredible stunts and practical effects. And although they didn't use CGI completely, they did use quite a bit. And that was a little disappointing. Also, the time between Fury Road and Furiosa may have been a little too long for me. If this would have came out 2 years after Fury Road, I'd have been like, hell yeah, let's do it. But 9 years, I just feel like it was kind of pointless to make a prequel about Furiosa. This story doesn't push the universe forward, and it doesn't enhance the universe either. But it's still incredibly good. And it does give us a good origin to a great character, and it should definitely hold us over until we see our boy Max again. I just hope we don't have to wait another 10 years to see it. So with all that being said, Furiosa gets a 4 out of 5 and is Grizzly grade guaranteed. Go check out in the theater near you. It's not doing too good at the box office. There was kind of a drop in theater numbers over the last 2 months. So make sure y'all get in there and y'all support this movie because it's a pretty damn good movie. And that does it for another episode. Make sure you click the links in the description and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and also follow the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the content I'm bringing your way. Also, make sure you check out Carl Casey at Whitebat Audio. He is a synthwave master, and his music is being used throughout each episode, so check him out on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube. It is so damn good to be back. So I'm working on some things for the YouTube channel and the TikTok page, more Monster Manual episodes, the Return of the Grizzly Guide, and more Mean Joe Metal. So please look in the episode description below and subscribe to the YouTube channel and my TikTok now so you don't miss those. And I got some more reviews coming your way on the next episode. Got some movies coming out like The Watchers and A Quiet Place Day 1. So stay tuned for those reviews. And finally, once again, thank you for being patient while I had to take a hiatus to handle some personal stuff. Everything's good, all is well, and I'm back now. So thank you all so much. Without y'all, none of this would be possible. But until next time, remember, I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.